After a decade of waiting and watching Gearbox struggle to recapture the magic of Borderlands 2, I'll be honest, I wasn't expecting much from Borderlands 4. The third game felt like it was playing catch-up in a genre the series had pioneered. And with so many other looter shooters doing interesting things with the formula, Borderlands started to feel like that friend who peaked in high school. But sometimes the fourth time really is the charm, because Borderlands 4 delivers the most significant evolution this franchise has seen since 2012, even if it comes with some growing pains that might make you want to throw your controller at the wall. Let me start with what Gearbox got right this time: the story. After Borderlands 3's catastrophic narrative about insufferable influencer villains, I was prepared for another eye-rolling slog through forced memes and dated pop culture references. Instead, Borderlands 4 delivers what might be the most grounded and emotionally engaging story the series has ever told. Set on the planet Chyros, you're not just hunting vaults for money this time. You're part of a resistance movement fighting against the Timekeeper, who manages to be genuinely menacing without drowning you in endless quips. The Timekeeper isn't trying to be the next handsome Jack, and that's exactly why he works. Where Jack was a charismatic monster who never shut up, the Timekeeper is an ever-present threat who lets his actions speak louder than his words. The supporting cast of villains fills in the personality gaps nicely, and the story builds genuine tension around the central conflict of liberating Chyros from oppression. The writing feels more mature, the stakes feel real, and for once, I found myself actually caring about the characters I was supposed to be helping. That said, this grounded approach comes with trade-offs. Several reviewers noted that the new cast of characters, while inoffensive, lacks the memorable personality that made earlier Borderlands characters so iconic. Rush is your typical strong guy with a heart of gold. Zadra is a scientist with a shady past. They're well-written archetypes, but archetypes nonetheless. The game seems so determined to not repeat Borderlands 3's mistakes that it overcorrected into bland safety. You won't hate these characters like you might have some previous ones, but you probably won't love them either. The 4 new Vault Hunters represent the strongest roster the series has ever offered. Vex the Siren brings summoning abilities that let you deploy ghostly doppelgangers or transform into a more powerful form. Rafa, the Exo Soldier, can manifest all sorts of destructive weapons from shoulder-mounted turrets to melee arm blades. Harlow, the Gravatar, manipulates gravity to trap enemies in bubbles and control the battlefield. And Aeon, the Forge Knight, uses advanced tech to create elemental melee weapons for up-close combat. What makes this roster special isn't just the variety, it's that every single Vault Hunter feels viable for both solo play and team composition. Previous games always seemed to have 1 or 2 characters that felt underpowered or awkward to play, but Borderlands 4 achieves remarkable balance. Each character has 3 distinct skill trees that can fundamentally change their playstyle, and with the game's generous respec system, experimentation is actively encouraged rather than punished. The biggest change in Borderlands 4 is the transition to a proper open world, and it's both the game's greatest strength and its most frustrating weakness. This isn't the segmented level design of previous entries. Chyros is a massive, seamless world divided into 4 distinct regions that you can explore freely. The sense of scale is impressive, with dozens of points of interest, dynamic boss encounters that spawn randomly throughout the world, underground mines that function like dungeons, and a bounty system that gives you specific targets to hunt. Movement in this open world feels fantastic thanks to a suite of new traversal options. You can double jump, dash in any direction, glide across large gaps, and use a grappling hook to reach previously inaccessible areas. There's also a summoned vehicle system that lets you call in transportation without having to trek to specific spawn points. The gunplay benefits enormously from these movement options. Combat encounters become vertical playgrounds where you're constantly repositioning, diving, and soaring across gaps while raining death on enemies below. But here's where things get frustrating. The world design doesn't always live up to its open world ambitions. You'll constantly run into invisible walls when trying to climb what looks like a perfectly scalable cliff face, or find yourself unable to interact with surfaces that seem like they should be climbable.
Other open-world games use natural barriers like mountains or water to guide exploration. Borderlands 4 relies too heavily on artificial limitations that break immersion when you're expecting complete freedom of movement. The technical performance issues are impossible to ignore. Multiple reviewers experience severe stuttering and frame rate problems, especially in the early hours as shader caches built up. While patches seem to be addressing some of these issues, the fact remains that the game launched in a rough technical state. Co-op play, which should be Borderlands' crown jewel, is plagued with problems ranging from progress tracking issues to enemies becoming immune to damage or teleporting around the map. Playing with friends often meant dealing with constant technical friction that dampened the social experience the game is built on. Despite these problems, the core gameplay loop remains as addictive as ever. Enemies explode into showers of multicolored loot, and the weapon variety continues to impress with guns that fire sparkly stars, sniper rifles that turn into Gatling guns, and SMGs that transform into flamethrowers. The legendary drop rates have been rebalanced to feel more meaningful than Borderlands 3's loot pinata approach, while remaining more generous than Borderlands 2's stingy endgame. Blue and purple weapons can carry you through the entire campaign, which makes finding that perfect legendary feel like a genuine upgrade rather than a requirement. Boss fights have evolved significantly, incorporating puzzle mechanics and environmental hazards that force you to do more than just circle strafe while shooting. You'll throw toxic bombs to strip armor, use your grappling hook to stay airborne when the floor becomes hazardous, and adapt to enemies with unique defensive mechanics. These encounters strike a nice balance between accessibility and complexity. They're more engaging than the simple bullet sponge fights of the past without becoming overwhelming for casual players. The endgame content shows promise with 3 weekly activities, modified story missions with challenging modifiers, repeatable boss fights with guaranteed legendary drops, and the rotating vendor that sells high-tier gear. The Ultimate Bull Hunter mode introduces 5 difficulty tiers that are unlocked through challenging quest chains rather than forcing you to replay the entire campaign. While the endgame isn't as deep as something like Destiny's raids, it provides a solid foundation that should keep dedicated players engaged, especially with promised post-launch content updates. Borderlands 4 feels like a series rediscovering its identity after years of uncertainty. The transition to open-world design isn't perfect, and the technical issues at launch are genuinely concerning, but the core experience captures what made people fall in love with this franchise in the first place. The gunplay is the tightest it's ever been, the movement system adds a new dimension to combat, and the loop progression strikes that perfect balance between accessible and rewarding. If you're a series veteran who felt disappointed with Borderlands 3, this feels like a genuine return to form that respects what made Borderlands 2 special while pushing the formula forward. If you're new to the series, this is arguably the best entry point, with quality of life improvements and balanced difficulty that won't punish newcomers. The technical issues mean you might want to wait a few weeks for patches, but under those problems is a game that successfully evolves the looter-shooter genre it helped create. Borderlands 4 proves that sometimes taking risks pays off, even when the execution is imperfect. It's a badass open-world evolution that gives this wonderfully unhinged series the kick in the pants it needed, and I expect to be chasing legendary loot on Chyros for months. Just maybe wait for that day 1 patch before diving in with your friends. If this review helped you decide whether Borderlands 4 is worth your time and money, consider subscribing for more honest game reviews and dropping a like to help the channel grow. What's your experience been with the Borderlands series? Let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next review.